In this video, we want to talk about something that's affecting the Northeast. We've had these additional restrictions as part of the coronavirus response, restrictions that were requested of the government by the local councils in the Northeast and granted this Thursday. Now, you'll watch the telly, read the newspapers, you'll hear the scientists, you'll see the politicians, you'll see the local council leaders all putting the case for these restrictions. This video has a slight counterpoint. Joining me is the chairman of the High Street Group, which also owns hospitality venues such as the Purple Peacock, Gary Forrest. Let's talk about how you feel about these restrictions. Do you think that the local councils have called this right in asking for local restrictions in Newcastle and beyond?
Certainly not, Graham. If I'm honest with you, I think that firstly, as a country, we need a very clear strategy how we move forward. It needs to be a long-term strategy. At the moment, everything seems to be reactive and for a short-term measure. And this is a perfect example of that. As we've got a lot of hospitality venues across the northeast of England, and we got notification of this 2 days ago. And we've had all our staff, all the management team, everybody connected to the business have been working really long hours, having sleepless nights. How we keep the business moving forward, how we ride this storm, and this sort of action without due consideration, without even discussions with the business operators in the mix of all this, it beggars belief.
I understand that you'll be frustrated at the way you've been on the receiving end of this action, but do you believe the action will work? Do you think it will help drive the virus incidence down?
To be honest with you, I'm no scientist. What I do know is that we have been operating table service and social distancing across all our restaurants and bars since we reopened back in July. We've managed, even with them with that in place, we've managed still to create an ambience and a place where people have enjoyed going and mixing with some friends and family. What I can say is, in all that time, we have yet to have a visit from anybody inspecting whether we're doing things in the correct manner or not. And I think that one of the options that could have been done as a test base is to say, right, well, in fact, we're going to start, having a lot more, random inspections, and those that fail will get shut down. Those that are passing the tests and are implementing all the procedures the government have asked us to do, you can keep your venues open. And that probably would have had a bigger effect much earlier in the process. So instead of doing that on a regular basis over the last 3 months, it may be that's been people have started to go a little bit lackadaisical in that approach, and the standards have slipped. I know they haven't in our venues, and that could have controlled and managed that and potentially controlled any outbreak.
It is a very good point, Gary. I know just south of this restriction, you've got Tees Valley. Tees Valley is not caught up in these restrictions for the hospitality industry. Yet, over the preceding weeks in Middlesbrough, cases were climbing. The mayor was extremely active, both in the media, on social media. The council's officials were extremely active in the way you describe, and caseload has stabilised. So perhaps a more active and dynamic approach was what was called for.
Yeah, but the reality of that, I don't know the economics of the councils, but that would have cost the local authorities some money. Instead, what they'd rather do is make the small businesses and the northeast of England, particularly Newcastle city centre, a large part of its economy is based on the hospitality sector. And if you follow the letter of what Matt Hancock has said in his statement, effectively, is he saying that you can't just have table service, but you can only mix at that table service with members of your own household?
So you can take your sister out, but not your girlfriend.
And if that's the case, it's going to have a devastating effect on the hospitality market in the northeast of England.
Now, you're saying there's no clarity on that point. I mean, if you look at some of the media reports, I'll pull one out from the BBC website. It says that in the council areas affected, restrictions mean residents will not be able to mix with people outside their households or support bubbles. The interpretation, if you had a hard interpretation of that, it's exactly what you say. You can't go out to a restaurant with a friend, only with your family. A softer interpretation would mean that that only applies to house visits. So, but it's the lack of clarity that you're upset on.
Graham, it's not rocket science to tell us what we can and can't do. How difficult is it to communicate whether you can socialise with friends and family at table service only in a bar or restaurant, or yet that you can't? So a lot of people I know have interpreted it in the first instance that they can't go for a meal with friends. They can only go with family.
Right.
Now, that you could take a different interpretation of that and say, well, no, he's not actually saying that. But how difficult is it for them to give some clarity? Then we know where we stand.
I know in business you operate throughout the North East. I know you personally live in County Durham. I know you get involved in coaching football and all sorts of things as well. In your general opinion, do you think that the country, and this is maybe a minority view if you hold it, has maybe gone too far in the way it's approached lockdown and virus restrictions?
I certainly do, Graham. And to be fair, I've been saying that since the outset. Ultimately, at the end of the day, unless we get a grip of this and we have a clear path through, and the government deliver what they say they're going to deliver. The government came out when we first went into lockdown and said we will do what it takes to support the local businesses. We will do whatever it takes. They haven't. If you're a local business now, I can assure you, you will struggle to obtain debt and a loan to support your business from the banks. They haven't done what it takes, and this sort of behaviour. 1 minute you can open, you trade, you work hard, you get your business back on its feet, then you shut down for how long? 3-4 weeks? Nobody gives us any guidance to that, and then we start again. And every time, and this time around, the effect is even worse, because the first time in lockdown, right, we had grants, we had the furlough scheme, paid 8% of the salaries, and the banks and the landlords were given payment holidays on the bar, on your hotel, whatever it might be, on your mortgages. You were getting payment holidays. None of that, apart from the furlough scheme, which has been decreased, by the way, the rest of it's been took away.
We've got 1 minute left, Gary. I want to summarise what you're saying. You are expressing a minority sceptic view. Maybe it isn't that minority, but certainly if you watch the media, it's a minority sceptic view. You're not saying do nothing. You recognise there's 100 cases per 100,000 people in Sunderland, but you're saying that the officials should be more on it. And you're saying that if you're going to have closures, then the government has to be extending support. But the better thing to do would be to take a lighter touch approach and focus on deaths in hospitals rather than cases.
I think we should be protecting and making sure that we fully protect the people who are most vulnerable from this virus, and that the energy should be spent around protecting them people. Now I haven't been to see my mum for about a month, because she's in that vulnerable bracket. I do a lot of travelling about, and there's a risk of that. Okay. Now, what I'm saying is we need to be able to make that decision, and we should all be grown up and behave in a proper manner. And the government should, and then the government should set some guidelines and police it properly. And those that breach that should get shut down. Right, but those that are working hard to keep the businesses open, are enforcing and delivering everything the government have said we want you to do, should not be impacted in the same manner. And there's no policing of what's going on, And all that happens is that we have radical, lockdowns like this with a couple of days' notice. We're having to spend considerable amount of management time trying to find our way, a path through this, with zero clarity on what we can and can't do. Nobody knows.
Gary, we're going to leave it there. Well expressed. We'll put this video on LinkedIn, and we'll invite people to share in the debate and share the video. Thank you.
Thanks, Rim.